I'm Rohan Karamandi.
And I'm Phil Hawthorne, and we're the hosts of the Home Assistant podcast.
We're guessing you're into technology. Home Assistant is the #1 open source contributor project on GitHub with a focus on privacy and local control.
Join us every other week as we break down the latest features of Home Assistant and talk to everyday users who are automating their lives with Home Assistant.
From feeling like you're living in Star Trek with lights turning on in rooms when you walk in, to automating flushing the toilet, Home Assistant can integrate with virtually anything, and we've interviewed everyday people like yourselves that have done some pretty crazy automations.
Listen to the Home Assistant podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, or find us on YouTube, or visit homeassistant.fm.
It was tough. It was really tough because you're always trying to balance time constraints with feature richness as well, right? So we're trying to identify or put together what we believe is the minimum viable product to take to market. And so we needed to scope it and slice it as such. We wanted to get customer feedback as soon as possible on what we'd built and really validate the opportunity for the company as well. So we then sliced it quite heavily and made some pretty big decisions around what was going to go into that MVP. They were based on what is the highest percentage of use cases that our customers want to use this for. My name is Lucas Lovell, and I am VP of Product at Paddle.
This is Code Story, a podcast bringing you interviews with tech visionaries.
Spent 6 months moonlighting.
There's nothing on the back end.
Who share what it takes to change an industry.
I don't exactly know what to do next.
Took many goes to get right.
Who built the teams that have their back.
A company is its people.
The teams help each other achieve more.
Most proud of our team.
Keeping scalability top of mind.
All that infrastructure was a pain.
Yes, we've been fighting it as we grow.
Total waste of time.
The stories you don't read in the headlines.
It's not an easy thing to achieve, mind you.
Took it off the shelf and dusted it off and tried it again.
To ride the ups and downs of the startup life.
You need to really want it.
It's not just about technology.
All this and more on Code Story. I'm your host, Noah Labhart, and today how Lucas Lovell is leading the charge around end-to-end payments by centering the solution around being the merchant of record. This episode is sponsored by SpeakEasy. Grow your API user adoption and improve engineering velocity with friction-free integration experiences. With SpeakEasy's platform, you can now automatically generate SDKs in 10 languages and Terraform providers in minutes. Visit speakeasy.com/codestory and generate your first SDK for free. This message is sponsored by QA Wolf. QA Wolf gets engineering teams to 80% automated end-to-end test coverage and helps them ship 5 times faster by reducing QA cycles from hours to minutes. With over 100 5-star reviews on G2 and customer testimonials from SalesLoft, Drata, and AutoTrader, you're in good hands. Join the Wolfpack at QAWolf.com. Lucas Lovell grew up in Adelaide, Australia, before eventually landing where he resides now, in London. He studied law, but he eventually decided that he didn't want to become a lawyer. During his time in law school, he and his crew built an app, and ever since then, he was hooked on the wild ride that tech is. Prior to London, he spent 4 years in Paris and indeed loves to travel. He also enjoys skiing, and when asked about snowboarding, he said he'd tried, but eventually reverted back. 4.5 years ago, Lucas joined a company solving end-to-end payments while being the merchant of record. What was missing from the platform was some functionality around invoicing, which started him on his journey of product creation at the company. This is Lucas' creation story at Paddle.
Paddle is an end-to-end billing and payments platform that operates under a merchant of record model. So software companies all around the world use Paddle to power their payments and capture revenue globally. But the unique proposition that Paddle offers is the fact that we operate as a merchant. And what this means is that we are technically reselling your product and taking on liability for the transaction. And that enables us to handle all of the tax compliance, everything around calculating tax, filing tax, and remitting tax globally, everything around subscription renewal compliance, and everything around fraud as well. So the primary advantage being that your payments platform or your payments and billing infrastructure is playing a more sophisticated role in terms of taking all of that operational burden off of your shoulders as a software company so you can go and sell around the world without worrying about any of that stuff. So inside that all-in-one offering, there are a number of things. There is an end-to-end sort of subscription billing product. We do all the payments. We have payment methods. We provide the checkout experience. We do all of the tax, compliance, and fraud. And all of that is rolled into one product, single integration, and you can go and sell around the world with ease. Paddle supports just over 4,000 customers now globally. We're a company of about 300 folks, headquartered in London, where I am based. But we also have a couple of other hubs across Europe and then a pretty decent showing in the US as well. The company was founded about 12 years ago. I've been in the business for 4.5 years, and it's been a pretty fun ride. It was a much smaller company when I joined. Since then, we've been through $200 million Series D capital raise, acquired a company called Profitwell, which was a really interesting experience. And yeah, probably grown the company 3 or 4-fold in that period. So it's been a great journey. I love the company. It's a great place, and we have a great set of customers around the world as well.
Let's dive into what you would consider your MVP. So when you joined the company, right, what was that first project you worked on or that first task that you took on? You led the project. Tell me about that and how long it took you to execute and what sort of tools you're using to bring it to life.
When I joined the company, Paddle was a payments platform that primarily powered self-serve billing motions. And what I mean by that is companies that were deploying a product-led growth strategy where customers or users were self-serving onto their product through a checkout experience. So SaaS companies or software companies that have a relatively low price point that you can self-serve onto. Think all the classics like Slack, Miro, Dropbox, all these sorts of companies that you just go to the website, you hit get started and you're on your way. And that is today still Paddle's bread and butter, right? That's where we shine. When I joined the company about 4.5 years ago, there was a big strategic objective to go up market and a realization that in order to go up market, we needed to be able to support more sophisticated billing motions. Because as companies typically grow, they start to mix product-led growth with sales-led growth. They start to sell much bigger enterprise contracts as a revenue multiplier on top of their product-led growth motions. And so we needed an invoicing tool, right? We needed a way for a Paddle customer to come into the product and send an invoice to the tune of $150,000 for an enterprise contract. And then we wanted to do that within Paddle so that they didn't have to go and use another tool and create these two separate systems that were capturing revenue in different ways. So the first product that I worked on when I joined the company was to build out the first version of Paddle's invoicing tool, which was a pretty big strategic objective. As I said, a really exciting project. The product is still a pretty core part of Paddle's stack today, but at that point, we didn't have an invoicing tool. In terms of the set of tools that we used, from a technical standpoint, it was one of the first things that we built in more of a microservices architecture where we spun it off as a separate thing. So it wasn't built on top of our monolith. So that was a technical decision that was more of an engineering-led decision that we made pretty early on. And now the platform is much more reflective of that structure. But in terms of actually spinning up the initial version of the product, we use lots of other tools like Miro and Excalidraw to put together system design and think about customer journey mapping and problem mapping and opportunity identification. We did lots and lots of discovery, and we populated lots of boards in Miro with product discovery work and customer feedback. I was a big user of a tool called Gong that I'm sure you're familiar with. It's a sales intelligence tool. So I could get all that feedback from customers in the past. So it wasn't just relying on myself going out and speaking to customers when I arrived, but also able to see how customers had spoken about us potentially solving this problem in the past as well. So there were a range of tools that sort of came together and formed that gave us all of the necessary equipment to be able to put together what the first version of this looked like. And then we went from there, really.
So in building that first version, you got to make certain decisions and trade-offs around how you approach the problem, how you limit features, which is, your bread and butter in product management, right? Tell me about some of those decisions you had to make and how you and the team coped with the decision.
It was tough. It was really tough because you're always trying to balance time constraints with feature richness as well, right? So we're trying to identify or put together what we believe is the minimum viable product to take to market. And so we needed to scope it and slice it as such. We wanted to get customer feedback as soon as possible on what we'd built and really validate the opportunity for the company as well. So we thin sliced it quite heavily and made some pretty big decisions around what was going to go into that MVP. And they were based on a few things. They were based on what is the highest percentage of use cases that our customers want to use this for, and making sure that we're not building for 20 different use cases or 20 different types of invoicing models, but rather focusing on what is, if we had to solve one use case in invoicing, what would that use case be? So an example of that was we didn't build in recurring invoice capability. We left the subscription piece out at the first slice, which meant that our customers had to do a little bit of manual work if they were sending recurring invoices. But we thought that was an acceptable or palatable trade-off to make. It was all about thinking through what are the primary use cases, what does the minimum viable product look like, and how can we slice up the different iterations of this accordingly.
This message is sponsored by SnapTrade. Link in user brokerage accounts and build world-class investing experiences with SnapTrade's unified brokerage API. With over $12 billion in connected assets and over 300,000 connected accounts, SnapTrade's API quality and developer experience are second to none. SnapTrade is SOC 2 certified and uses industry-leading security practices. Developers can use the company's official client SDKs to build investing experiences in minutes without the limitations of traditional aggregators. Get started for free today by visiting snaptrade.com/codestory.
I'm so pumped about my new offshore dev partner. I'm saving a ton, and they even signed an NDA. Wait, is that our financial statements on the internet?
My dev partner has great communication. They can acknowledge an issue or email message super fast after they run it through Google Translate, of course.
I have a call set up with my partner right now. Hey guys, are you there? Wait, did you just ghost me?
Ever been in these situations? Yeah, me too. That is, until I found Tekla. Tekla is world-class, nearshore talent for technology teams who demand the highest standards. The platform gives you access to over 50,000 vetted Latin America technology experts, including developers, designers, and IT professionals, all fluent in English and all in your time zone. In 7 days or less, you can have your tech expert hired through Tekla's fast, efficient hiring process, which helps you find and onboard top candidates. Get senior-level talent at competitive rates, often half the cost of hiring in the U.S., but aligned with U.S. work culture and time zones, making teamwork easy and productive. Hire the best tech experts today with Tekla. Learn more at tekla.io. That's TECLA.io. This episode is sponsored by Speakeasy. Whether you're growing the user adoption of your public API or streamlining internal development, SDKs can turn the chore of API integration into effortless implementation. Unburden your API users from guessing their way around your API while keeping your team focused on your product. Shorten the time to live integration and provide a delightful experience for your customers. With Speakeasy's platform, you can now automatically generate up-to-date, robust, idiomatic SDKs in 10 languages and Terraform providers in just a matter of minutes. SDKs are feature-rich with type safety, auto-retries, and pagination. Everything you need to give your API the developer experience it deserves. Deliver a premium API experience without the premium price tag. Visit speakeasy.com/codestory to get started and generate your first SDK for free. This episode is sponsored by Vanta. You're a startup founder. Finding product market fit is probably your number one priority. But to land bigger customers, you also need security compliance. And obtaining your SOC 2 or ISO 27001 certification can open those big doors. But they take time and energy, pulling you away from building and shipping. And that's where Vanta comes in. Vanta is the all-in-one compliance solution helping startups like yours get audit ready and build a strong security foundation quickly and painlessly. How, you ask? Vanta automates the manual security tasks that slow you down, helping you streamline your audit. And the platform connects you with trusted experts to build your program, auditors to get you through audits quickly, and a marketplace for essentials like pen testing. So whether you're closing your first deal or gearing up for growth, Vanta makes compliance easy. Join over 8,000 companies, including many Y Combinator and Techstars startups who trust Vanta. For a limited time, get $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/codestory. That's VANTA.com/codestory. from that point, right, you kicked it off, say you've built the MVP of this, this version of the product. You are getting some traction, you're happy with it, right? How did you mature it? How did you progress it from that point? And I think that wrapped it in a box a little bit, and kind of as it applies to this invoicing project, and it also applies to the company, how do you go about building your roadmap? How do you decide what is the next most important thing to build or to address with Paddle?
We were very customer-led in our prioritization. We really believed and still believe in keeping the customer central to that decision-making. So we had a thesis on what the next iterations of the product would look like and what the next versions would incorporate from a feature perspective, but we very much focused on being led by the customer, and our target customer was a hybrid customer who was doing both PLG and SLG. And so we made sure that we weren't building an invoicing tool for a company that wasn't going to be using Paddle for their checkout volume either. It was very much, how do we build an invoicing tool that can really help these hybrid companies? And again, it was all about identifying those particular use cases and expanding the product from there to be able to handle and incorporate more use cases and more billing models as it pertains to invoicing. And I think this was 4 years ago, so the company was much smaller, and I think the product org at that point was less mature than what it is today. And the surface area that we cover now as a product team is much bigger than what it was back then. So the prioritization decision becomes really hard. But here's a rough framework for how we think about priority from a roadmap perspective. When we think about priority, we encourage our product managers to think about the impact that they're going to have on the business. And when they think about the work they're doing, it's also the impact they're going to have on the customer. But we have multiple customers, right? And we think about it like this. So there are 5 ways that we move the needle for the business, right? Put very simply. The first one is acquisition. We help drive net new business. So we help acquire customers that aren't currently on Paddle. And a good example of product roadmap work that contributes to that is expanding your billing model capability. Invoicing is a great example of that, right? Where we help the business acquire customers that previously could not use Paddle because we didn't have the functionality required for them to achieve their use case inside of Paddle. The second one is monetization. So is this thing or is thing X helping us monetize our installed base better? So are we making more money from existing customers? The third is retention. Does this thing help reduce churn in the installed base? The fourth is cost, which is a really important concept as a payments platform. Does this help reduce Paddle's cost base? So it's very much turning to more of an internal customer. Does building this thing give us gross margin efficiency gains? And the fifth is risk, right? So are we taking risk out of the business by building this thing? And again, as a merchant of record, because we do lots of compliance work, a lot of the things that appear on our roadmap are about being compliant with new laws and new regulations. And if we're not compliant, we're introducing risk into the product or into the company. It's very much like acquisition, monetization, retention, cost, and risk as the 5 ways in which our product team helps Paddle move forward as a business. And then what we try and do from a prioritization standpoint, because we know that all of these things look very different, right? Building something for your customers to win new business is very different from building something because the German government have introduced a new law about subscription renewal reminders. Both of those things look very different. We try and quantify the impact. So what we do is we sit there and we go, hey, what data have we got? Or what data do we need to give us a sort of directional steer on what impact this is going to have on the business? And then that sort of helps us shift different projects around to make sure that we're maximizing impact on the business as much as possible. So we use that business impact articulation as a core part of the prioritization framework to help us not only convince ourselves, but also do the necessary stakeholder engagement around the company to give everyone else confidence that the product and engineering team is indeed maximizing impact to the business through really strong and robust prioritization.
I'm curious about team, right? How do you go about building your team, and how does the company go about building the entire team? And I'm curious if there's differences, and I'm curious about what you look for in those people to indicate that they are the winning horses to join you.
Our product and engineering team is about 100 folks now. We have then the product teams, and then we have the platform teams. And the platform teams, their responsibility is keeping the lights on. And our product teams contribute to that as well, but primarily you have your SRE teams and your AppX teams. And their responsibility is reliability and scalability of the product, as well as making our product teams more efficient in how they go about building products. And we have a pretty meaty group in that department. It's highly critical. Like the thing about working in fintech and payments is that we are a critical piece of infrastructure for our customers. We need to make sure we're minimizing downtime, maintaining pretty high SLO standards, etc. So that's a big part of how we think about that. So we think about those teams as like service reliability, as well as a bit of developer efficiency in there as well. And then our product engineering groups, we've adopted a domain structure. So when you think about the surface area of the product, we've divided the product into three core groups or core domains. And each of those core domains owns particular services within the product and owns a roadmap. And you have a product and engineering leadership team that sit above that and own product strategy. And then sort of product strategy informs group level strategy, which informs roadmap. And then all the way back up as well. So it's bi-directional. So the things that our PMs and engineers are seeing on the ground and how they're looking at customers who are interacting with our product also feeds back up the chain to inform product strategy as well. And then in terms of the type of people that we're looking for, there are a few things that are really important to us. The first one is high agency and high accountability. So we love folks who have an ownership mentality and who bring that to work every day. I think it's a very important skill as a PM, and we particularly hire for that trait especially. The second one is we look for customer centricity. So we look for empathetic people who are very comfortable exposing themselves to how other people feel about things. And that's both internally across the business, but also with our customers, and folks who are comfortable stepping into their shoes, getting in front of customers and really learning and sitting side by side with customers to understand and build empathy for the problems they're experiencing. And then we also look for people who are relatively data centric as well. Comfortable fetching their own data, who are comfortable working in a world where there is lots of data and you have to be able to cut through the noise and think about what is the most pragmatic use of data. And I think those three pillars have been a really strong basis for how we think about product management at Paddle. So high agency, ownership mentality people who are customer centric and data centric. The other thing that probably wraps all around that is communication. Communication in an org like Paddle is super important. Why it's especially important at a company like Paddle is because payments is inherently complex. Like the technology under the hood of a payments company is fundamentally complex. And we really look for people who are able to take complex concepts and articulate them very clearly, both to customers, to internal stakeholders, to their peers. We think that communication and your ability to be pithy and succinct in communication is really important as well. So there are a few examples of some things that we look for when we're identifying people to join the team.
This message is sponsored by QA Wolf. If slow QA processes bottleneck your software engineering team and you're releasing slower because of it, you need a solution. You need QA Wolf. QA Wolf gets engineering teams to 80% automated end-to-end test coverage and helps them ship 5 times faster by reducing QA cycles from hours to minutes. With over 100 5-star reviews on G2 and customer testimonials from SalesLoft, Drata, AutoTrader, and many more, you're in good hands. Ready to ship faster with fewer bugs? Join the Wolfpack at QAWolf.com to see if they can help you squash the QA bottleneck. This message is sponsored by SnapTrade. Link in-user brokerage accounts and build world-class investing experiences with SnapTrade's unified brokerage API. With over $12 billion in connected assets and over 300,000 connected accounts, SnapTrade's API quality and developer experience are second to none. SnapTrade is SOC 2 certified and uses industry-leading security practices. Developers can use the company's official client SDKs to build investing experiences in minutes without the limitations of traditional aggregators. Get started for free today by visiting snaptrade.com/codestory. So I'm curious about scalability. Has there been interesting areas where Paddle has had to fight scalability as it's grown?
Yeah, definitely. I think especially early days when the transactional volume through the product was increasing rapidly. Again, I wasn't probably here for that initial growth, but based on what others in the business tell me, there were definitely moments there where we had to think about technical and platform scalability pretty deeply. We also went through a replatforming exercise 2.5 years ago now. So we effectively rebuilt the billing component of the platform, which was a massive task. Something that has delivered us a lot of really positive success since, but a massive task nonetheless. And effectively having a system that was in some ways, we had to go through that journey again of being able to level up the scalability of the infrastructure. and get comfortable with a lot more load than what we were beforehand was a pretty interesting project as well. So like scalability from a technical standpoint, yeah, as a payments company, lots of examples where we've had to encounter that before. But like we're pretty good now. Like I think we're pretty mature and robust from a scalability perspective as it pertains to technology and systems.
As you step out on the balcony and you look across all that you've built with your time at Paddle, what are you most proud of?
Probably the re-platform, to be honest. We have Paddle Classic and Paddle Billing, and Paddle Classic is the old monolithic product, and Paddle Billing is the more modern product that was quite a grueling project, to be honest. It took a lot of people, probably 12 to 18 months to actually get through a rebuild of all the core billing components and how all those pieces fit together. I think the thing that I'm proud of is A, the people and how they got through that process. And I think a lot of really good thinking went into it. Like we didn't just rebuild Paddle, we redesigned Paddle for the modern software company. And my thesis at the start was, A, we can unlock a lot of potential value through added functionality on top of the new product that we felt we were constrained by on the old product. Secondly, product velocity should go up, right? Because we're building on top of much more modern infrastructure. And I think both of those things have turned out to be true. It's not a sexy, flashy feature, unfortunately. I think most people would probably share something super sexy or some wild experiment or bold move that went really well. But for me, I think going through the re-platforming project was a big learning opportunity, especially for someone like me, because I didn't come from a technical background. As I said at the start, I came from a law background, at least at university. My career in tech and in product management has been very much a learning on the job with respect to engineering and the technical side and system design and architecture and that sort of stuff. I built a lot of respect for our engineering team and also a lot of empathy for the sorts of problems that they encounter by going through that project. And yeah, I think that's definitely the sort of proudest one that I've done here at Paddle.
Let's flip the script a little bit. I'm curious, tell me about a mistake you made and how you and your team responded to it.
We made the mistake of not seeing the project through enough and eventually probably letting some of the additional iterations and slices that we had planned slip a little bit. I think we lost some focus and we probably redirected resource to other areas of the product a little bit too soon. And for that reason, I think we left that product in what I would call an MVP state for too long. And that caused a bunch of customer friction and a bunch of misalignment around strategic objectives and our ability to achieve them. So I think that in hindsight was a bit of a mistake. I think we treated it as an experiment for too long and didn't mature that product quickly enough. I think sometimes as well in a leadership role, like I can point to a lot of mistakes where we've created a lack of focus through pushing too many strategic priorities on the teams. And I think one thing I reflect on as a leader a lot is about how can I help. I'm reading this book at the moment actually called The One Thing. You might have read it. I think it's quite a popular business book, but it's all about how great companies are built sequentially. So one focus at a time, broadly. But I think I definitely reflect on instances where we probably fell into the trap of being a meter wide and an inch deep, where we should have been deeper on fewer things. So yeah, that's not pointing to one mistake per se, but a bit of a reflection on perhaps a series of mistakes that I made as a leader.
So let's move forward then. What does the future look like for Paddle, for the products, and for your team?
Who knows what the future looks like, right? I think technology's taken a giant leap forward in the last 12 months or so, hasn't it? With all of this AI stuff. And I think it's going to be a pretty interesting few years ahead of us. Payments is always perceived. It's perceived by most people as a back office requirement, right? It's very much perceived as something that helps you operate your company or enables you to operate your company, insofar as you can capture sales globally by using a payments product. And I think for us, like the transition we're making is from thinking about Paddle as an operational partner to our customers to thinking about Paddle as a growth partner to our customers. Payments is in many ways an invisible growth layer. There are a lot of levers that you can pull inside of a payments platform that can add percentage points to growth rates. Think about checkout conversion, think about payment acceptance, think about pricing localization, think about offering local payment methods to drive conversion rates, think about experimentation around pricing and packaging. All of these things exist inside of a payments platform, but most people don't use all of those levers in the way that they potentially could to maximize outcomes for their company. And so I think the future for Paddle is about how do we turn payments into a growth lever? How can Paddle's product fundamentally surface growth opportunities for our customers by incorporating more complex machine learning and AI sort of stuff into the product where it makes sense to really drive customer value and help our customers grow. Improving capabilities around A/B testing, dynamic pricing, this sort of stuff that I think is really exciting. So I think we're going to see like a step change in what the expectations are of a table stakes payments platform. And I think Paddle as a company in product, we're really thinking about how we can unlock the product as a growth lever and really surface a lot more of that tooling that exists inside of the payments platform to help our customers grow. So I think that's the direction we're taking the product, and I think I'm pretty excited about it.
Okay, so let's switch to you, Lucas. Who influences the way that you work? Name a person or many persons or something you look up to and why.
I think my very original interest in business actually came from reading one of Richard Branson's early books, which he's not really a tech entrepreneur in the classic world of technology, but I think his books were really the initial inspiration for me when I was early days, late teenage years, early 20s, thinking about going into sort of the technology and business world. I think I really admired sort of his charisma and I think authenticity as a leader as well. I think that really shone through in everything he did. And then more recently, as I've looked for more sort of inspiration from domain expertise in what I do, I've typically sought inspiration and learning from more of the sort of successful product leaders in the world and tech leaders in the world. I've really enjoyed and been informed by books like Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. And I've really enjoyed a lot of Marty Kagan's work as well, the Inspired book series. I think some of the thought leadership that he's provided around product management and product leadership is good. I think also other people in tech, but also the people who I've worked with at Paddle, right? So I was lucky enough to join Paddle when it was still founder-led. So Paddle was led by Harrison Rose and Christian Owens, who were the two founders of Paddle. And then Harrison left quite soon after I joined, maybe a year or two after I joined, and Christian maybe 3 years after I joined. Those two people have been great to me and really supported my growth inside the business. And they're two people that I continue to interact with a lot and learn from. And then also the current leadership, our current CEO, Jimmy, is a very seasoned tech executive who worked at ServiceNow for a long time, as well as the current CPO of Paddle, Stu Bailey, who was CPO at Currency Cloud that got sold to Visa. I'm not someone who reads every book from every thought leader out there. I tend to gain inspiration from people that are more proximate to me and who I'm interacting with more day to day. But there are definitely a few sources of inspiration from some of those sort of seasoned and more well-known business leaders as well.
Okay, Lucas, last question. So you're getting on a plane and you're sitting next to a young entrepreneur who's built the next big thing. They're jazzed about it. They can't wait to show it off to the world and can't wait to show it off to you right there on the plane. What advice do you give that person, being the product guru that you are and the leader at Paddle?
I'm imagining them probably being some sort of business leader in the AI world. And the one thing I would probably say is AI is a technology and it's a tool. It's not a product. And I think the most successful AI companies will still start by solving deep customer problems and using AI in a way that solves customer problems. So I think that's probably the one thing I would say is make sure you're thinking about customer problems and not getting carried away by the wave of AI and falling into the trap of thinking about the technology as the product. The technology is the tool that enables you to generate customer outcomes. And I think tech companies that still keep that customer centricity in their DNA are the ones who are ultimately going to be really successful. So I think in my capacity as a product leader, that's probably the reminder I'd give.
I think that's a fantastic reminder and couldn't agree more. Well, Lucas, thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for telling your creation story at Paddle.
Thanks very much, Noah. It was great to talk to you.
And this concludes another chapter of Code Story. Code Story is hosted and produced by Noah Labhart. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting app of your choice. And when you get a chance, leave us a review. Both things help us out tremendously. And thanks again for listening.
If you're looking for legit ways to make extra money, you've got to check out The Side Hustle Show. With hundreds of actionable episodes to choose from, you'll learn what's working now from real people making real money, like the Utah mom who built a six-figure business playing video games, or the guy earning $3,000 a month renting out mobility scooters. Online or offline, from Amazon to your own hometown, from YouTube to vending machines, The Side Hustle Show has you and your wallet covered. Subscribe to The Side Hustle Show wherever you're listening to this podcast and increase your earning power today.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ12. Just go to Indeed.com/PODKATZ12 right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.